Alright guys, I know you've been waiting on another video on this Mercury, so here it is. The reason why I haven't been working on it is because I took a couple weeks off for Christmas. It's also been really cold in Texas standards. It's been cold, so like 25 degrees, which working outside isn't really that exciting. If you have to do it, you have to do it. But today's going to be around 60 degrees. It's going to get colder as it gets as the day goes on, so we're going to have to do this pretty quickly. But before we work on the car, I want to put to rest a couple things that have come up in the comments. So the first thing is going to be, what engine is this? So this is a 383 cubic inch MEL engine, MEL, which stands for Mercury, Edsel, and Lincoln. So it's not an FE motor, it's not a Y block, it's a 383. So let me show you in the book really quick. I don't know how well this is going to show up, but right here, the engines for Monterey and Montclair series vehicles, 8-cylinder, valve and head, 90-degree V-type, which has a displacement of 383 cubic inches using a 4.3 inch bore and a 3.3 inch stroke. The compression ratio is 10:1. These also came, if you had a Park Lane, which was the nicer one, a 430, which basically is just a longer stroke. Everything else is the same. So it's not a Y block, it's not a 312, it's actually a 383. So with that being said, being a 383 means parts for this engine are just that much more expensive. It's not your normal Ford type engine. For example, the water pump was like 215 bucks. The fuel pump was $100 and something to get a new one. I toyed around with getting a rebuild kit, which I couldn't find, and then pulling a different pump apart and putting that pump in there, and I was like, you know what, I'll just get a new one. The second thing that people had been commenting a lot about was the oiling issue on the passenger side. So there's a couple rocker arms that didn't get any oil, and they kept saying, clean out the push rods, clean out the push rods. Well, guess what, guys? Look at this push rod. There is no hole. There's no oil that goes up any push rods. If you look at this book, this is how it oils. It goes from the oil pump to the oil filter, past the oil pressure switch, to up above the camshaft, which then oils the cam and the main bearings. But then it goes through the head into what is called the rocker arm shaft. There's no oil in any push rod, and what happens is basically the oil goes up to this huge rocker arm shaft, fills it up, and then just kind of dribbles out the ends of the rocker arm. So it's not like your typical small block Chevy where you're going to have a ridiculous amount of oil pouring out of the push rods right onto the rocker arms. That's why when it comes to this side, I'm really not worried about some of those rocker arms that don't have large amounts of oil on them yet, because that's just the style that the engine was. That's how they oiled, and that's why they don't do it like this anymore, because it's really not that great of an oiling system in my opinion, but it does work. I know with a little bit more heat and a little bit more run time, I'm pretty sure those rockers will quiet down. I plan on putting a little bit of oil on them before we start up the engine again. Another thing we're going to do today is, if you notice in the last video, a couple of viewers pointed out that one of my push rods on this other side was not straight. And thank you very much for pointing that out, because I wouldn't have noticed that at all. So we're going to pull that valve cover off again, and we're going to get that push rod figured out, maybe check all the rest of them, and I'll show you the rocker arms shaft and how that works too. I got this valve cover undone without breaking this gasket, which I'm really happy about. But this is the rocker arm shaft, and let's see if I can get one of these bolts out for you. They're going to be really gross, and the reason why is because that's where all the oil comes up through. So pretty nasty, but you know what, for an engine this old, it's not surprising. What I do need to do is I need to vacuum out a little bit more under here, I think, than I did before. But we'll get this shaft off, and then we'll check all the push rods. I know this one's bent a little bit, just a little bit. Not bent enough to make an issue, but it might make an issue down the road, and that's what I don't want. So yep, that just lifts off just like that, and you can see that's where the oil comes out and goes in. Not really surprising. I believe it's this one and then this one that are larger, where the oil comes through. But looking at the wear on the tips of the rocker arms are not too bad. That's going to make a big mess. I'll clean it up later. Alright, so this one is the bent one. It doesn't look that bent, actually. It looks pretty good, but if you put it on a flat surface, I guarantee you it's going to be bent. So that could be a problem. Look at the end of that one. I'm glad I checked that. So, yeah, comparing it to this one, it actually is bent. So what I'm gonna do is pull each one of these out, compare it to a new one, and if they're not bent, I'll put them back and check the tip. This is what a straight one looks like. So it has an even gap all the way in between, and the ball ends look really, really good. So that one looks really good. That's going to be the third one down from the top. The other thing I want to check before or after I get done checking all these push rods is I want to check that lifter. That you can see the lifter down that hole. I don't think I'll be able to get it on camera, but I should be able to compare it to the lifter that's here and here. If you remember in the last video, I mean, the valve moved, the lifter moved, the push rod was working, it just was a little bent, so that's why I came back in here and went and looked inside. So hopefully there's nothing wrong with the lifter and it's just the push rod that got chewed up. We'll see. Just to be thorough, I removed this last rocker arm. It basically just slides on like this, and then you have two washers and a cotter pin that hold it together. So the way it works is you have oil that comes up through here, goes into the rocker arm shaft, and then comes out these little two holes. And then as the rocker rotates, you see inside there's a hole that then brings oil up inside of it and then out, I believe, that end right there, and then that just dribbles down. So that's how it's oiled. Now the reason I took it apart is because this rocker arm looks a little different colored. See how that one's kind of a tan color and all the rest are silver? I'll probably pull this other end one off because that was the other one that wasn't getting any oil in it. I'm going to clean out the rocker arm, clean out this end of the shaft, and it should get oil. I mean, it shouldn't have any problem considering all the rest are getting oil. And if you look at that oil passage, I've cleaned it up so it's clear. Shouldn't have any more issues with that. But we'll double check and verify it. But something unique about this water pump is that it has an outlet that goes to the top of the intake, right underneath the thermostat, and you need a piece of 7/8 inch hose in order to make that connection, which I was going to do it yesterday, but guess what? I didn't have it, so I had to run to the store this morning and got this. So that's what you have to do in order to get that to connect correctly. So we'll put that on first. This is probably easier than with two people. Oh no, my gasket's coming up. The new water pump is on. So next we have to do is put this thermostat housing back in. And here's the thermostat that came in it. It looks pretty original. I couldn't tell. But it looks like it's it says 09 on it. That doesn't mean anything to me. Anyway, I'm putting a 195 thermostat back in it. So it sits like this in the block. And it goes on right there. So no real big job with that. It's just something that, if you have everything out already, you might as well do it. Bottom hose is in, water pump is on, the little top hose is attached. From there we have the fuel pump, and then the belts and the fan and all that stuff, and we should be able to run it again, hopefully. After way too long, I finally got the front of this engine mostly put back together. So we have two new belts, the water pump is on, same with the pulley and the fan. The 4 bolts are tightened up on the fan. Also this upper radiator hose, they said it fit. I mean, it's a little kinked right here, but I think it will be fine. Hopefully it doesn't leak. We'll see. If not, I'll have to go buy another one, but that's the one that they gave me. Here on the other side, we have the new radiator hose on the bottom. The water pump's all in. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the fuel pump, get that all working and plumb the way it's supposed to, and then from there we can fill it full of water and we can probably get it to go. I apologize about the wind noise in advance. It gets windier and windier as I go. But here's the fuel pump from Cantor. Basically what I need to verify is that these outlets they look like they're clocked in the same position as the old ones, which is good. I need to make sure this, take that off, fits into this, and then I need to make sure this fits into this. And if they do, we should be ready to go, and it should be a fairly easy install. And it's a newer style pump maybe. I lost the gasket. No. It looks a little bit different than the old one, but that's okay. I mean, as long as it pumps, that's all I care about. And you know, it is expensive enough. It sure better pump. That's all I'm gonna say. It sure better pump. The last piece of the puzzle for this fuel pump is to put the fuel filter on. I did notice earlier that it wasn't me, I didn't put it together, but these fittings were reversed. So this is how the fuel filter was. Imagine the fittings on the opposite ends. That's how it was before when I put it together, so I've since put them together correctly, and that's how it should sit. So my question is, I don't know if you guys can answer this, is the glass fuel filter supposed to sit this way, or is it supposed to fit this way? I was wondering if you guys could tell me which way it should fit. That would be nice. I'm gonna install it like this, but we'll just have to see which way it goes. I'll do some research online, but other than that, we have this inlet line here, and then fill it full of water, and it should go. It should run. Oh, I gotta put this radiator hose back. But other than that, battery cable, battery tray, battery, and gas. I completed the fuel system. We got the filter, we have the pump, we have the fuel line that runs from here, goes down away from the fan because you don't want to hit it, and then up to my nifty lawnmower gas tank. So that should be a good gravity feed type gas tank for now until we can get to the other one. I have the battery bungeed in because I don't want that again to fall and hit the fan. I replaced the really ratty and crappy negative battery cable. This cable was red, so I wrapped it in electrical tape, but it's a really nice cable, and it should work out fairly well. So all we need now is water and gas. We should be able to hear the engine run without the water pump making all kinds of noise, and we should be able to get it up to temperature and go from there. And once we get it to temperature, we can check transmission fluid, top that off, and then maybe, just maybe, see if it'll move just a bit under its own power. We have gas in the gas tank, water in the radiator. I would prime the carb and fill that up full of gas, but I'm gonna let the fuel pump start pumping some gas and see if that will actually fill that fuel filter, and once we get to that point, then we'll be good. Alright, I can see there is gas in that bowl. And so far, I don't think we have any fuel leaks, so that's good. Ooh, we wanted to. Someone's gotta be done with that starter. Let's try that. Oh. No, don't die. Don't die. Why? Why can't you run long enough for me to want to make you run? died. Well, I hate to end this video like this, but the temperature's dropping and we run into a problem which I don't have the parts for. If you notice in the last clip, the starter went click and then it stopped. And I couldn't turn the engine over by hand, and every time I put the negative battery cable back on the battery, it sparked really, really badly, meaning it had a pretty big load on it. And when I undid the line on this side of the solenoid to the starter and I put the battery cable on, it was just fine, which tells me that the starter was jammed up and there's something wrong with it. I thought, you know, 3 bolts, it's easy. Actually, the car came with a starter right here that I can throw right in and have no problems, but here's the problem. If you look down here, you see that? So that's the little Bendix spring that runs everything. It's got some teeth that are chipped off. So that's problem number 1. I need to buy another one of those to stick on the end of this starter. But problem number 2, I can't get the starter out unless I lift the motor up. And it's cold enough right now that I'm like, I'll wait for a different day. So, sorry we didn't get to see the engine really run that well. I mean, the clips that we did see, it ran fairly decent, fairly quiet, but, you know, I'm going to have to replace every single accessory on this motor. We did carburetor, distributor, fuel pump, water pump. What's next? Well, I have a generator in a box inside the car that I can put on. I might end up having to do that too. So, very disappointing, but hopefully in the next video we'll get even farther.